We also don't have a specific metric for UX, but when you ask customers who have used some competitor and came back to you, you ask them, so why did you leave them? And thing that always comes up with, that system was clunky to use. We couldn't train our employees to use it, and your system is really good. So it's more like a verbal thing rather than something you can see as a number.
Hi, I'm your host, Magali Pellissier, and I'm a product manager. Each week, I show you the other side of a product. I interview the people who contribute to making products a success. They are engineers, writers, marketers, support analysts, UX designers, or even salespeople. Not only will I give them the credit they deserve, but will uncover what makes a good product and product manager from their perspective. Over the next 3 weeks, I'm releasing special episodes in a roundtable format. Think about it like a friendly competition between PMs and their stakeholders. On one hand, a team of 2 stakeholders with the same role, for example, UX designers. On the other hand, a team of 2 product managers, including myself. There are 3 rounds, 1 per week, during which I give a word to start with, and each person shares the first word that comes to their mind when they hear it. And we discuss, debate, share our perspectives. At the end of each episode, we vote, and the person who came up with the best word wins a point for their team. There will be debates, battles, and hopefully alignment between PMs and their stakeholders. Stakeholder management is a key skill for product managers, so just as you are obsessed with listening to your customers, let's hear from your stakeholders. Welcome to this roundtable between product management and UX design. On the UX design team, I am pleased to welcome 2 of my previous guests, Pamela Sanchez and Hayden Chambers. In episode 6, my first UX designer representative in this podcast, Pamela, based in Colombia and working for Torre, talked to me about being a UX designer in a startup after having been a UX researcher for 2 years before that. In addition to being a creative soul, I was impressed by how she is very hands-on on user research and strategic activities, including road mapping. I then discussed with Hayden in the 12th episode about his role as a product designer at Echo Online. He's worked across a broad range of design disciplines, starting in design and advertising, but also interactive and web design. Through my interview, he's demonstrated a lot of empathy towards product managers, which he gained in various roles, including as a front-end developer and mentor. Those 2 episodes with Pamela and Hayden are amongst the most successful so far in the podcast. So if you've missed them, I recommend giving them a listen. In team product management, I am pleased to welcome for the first time Iryna Struck, a product manager at HandsHQ, where she's leading 2 SaaS products that empower companies to keep their high-risk teams safe. Being a true believer in the power of sharing ideas and building communities, Iryna organizes monthly Product Tank meetups in London, where professionals working in product come together to discuss the most interesting topics. I will be the second member of the team. I'm the lead product manager at RFI Global, a data and insights company. After a few years in the SaaS space, I took the leap for a challenge to build a startup within an established company and transform waterfall-style services into an agile product. I enjoy thinking holistically about the entire customer experience and creating work environments based on trust and openness, which is why I launched this podcast. Right. So this is the final round of this new roundtable between product management and UX design. And there's 1 point for the UX design team, 1 point for the product management team. So this is a critical episode. I hope everybody's ready. As Hayden said, you have to fight for your so you have to fight for this and represent your team. So the word for this round is KPI. So what is the first thing that comes to mind? And I will start with Iryna because you're a product manager. And I think we talk a lot about KPIs in product management.
Cool, perfect. Thank you so much. I always have the fear that if I go second or third, somebody is going to take my word. So that's amazing that I go first. So I think my word would be focus, just because KPIs are these guardrails that are helping the teams to stay focused on what really matters and what you really want to achieve and how to bring the most impact on your strategic business outcomes?
Pamela?
Okay, so my word, I love KPIs, first of all. Second of all, my word is measurable, because I think KPIs are like a beacon of light. They guide the way in the process of building the right products. They help us check in, making sure that things are healthy. They help us make sure that our targets are being reached. So it kind of makes things tangible, and they help us better understand the progress being made to make, again, more informed decisions and take the right actions as required.
Hayden?
I'm looking forward to the conversation on this one, particularly Pamela's word, but I feel like we're in danger with Iryna's word. I really like that. So I'm going to go with essential, and I mean that kind of in a double meaning, like obviously essential as in critical to have, but also in the idea of essence, of like drilling down to what the thing is, like what are you actually trying to achieve? So essential is my word.
Okay, yes. So I picked the words. And if we win this round, I would say maybe I was a bit biased because, KPIs are often used by product managers. And I really want to talk about the KPIs we should use for UX design. So let's start with your words, Pamela. So measurable. And the obvious question, what as a UX designer do you measure? What are your KPIs to measure a good design?
Wait, but you didn't say a word, I think.
Oh, I forgot. I was so deep into the conversation. Okay, my word is value. Okay, so there's value to make sure that what you deliver is valuable, that you're still focused on the right things and all of that. I didn't use just KPI. I thought KPI in the UX design context is to show the value of UX design. And we're going to come on to that, I'm sure. Sometimes it's easy to cut corners, as we've discussed before, on UX designs. Or it's easy for the leadership team to think, oh, we need a lot of engineers, but we're not necessarily going to hire new UX designers. How do you prove the value of UX designs to some people who may think it's just cosmetic? It doesn't. What's the ROI behind it? So that's why my word is value. Back to you, Pamela.
Yep.
So how do you measure that a design is good design then?
This is a great question because it has a lot of variables, I think. So I would like to base my answer on the PM's answers. So I think you can measure it based on focus and on value. So, and I think those are the two most important metrics. I'm not specifying anything because it depends a lot on the problem that you're trying to solve. But I think the main focus should always be where do you want to go, and if where you're going is going well. I don't know if that made sense.
I'm kind of in shock. The notion of measuring UX with KPIs is a really interesting one. And I would throw like another 3-letter acronym in here, which sort of frames it for me, which is if your company is using OKRs as its measure of success every year, then I think that the KPIs have to flow towards that as opposed to measuring UX, unless user joy is one of your KPIs. And for the UX, like harking back to being a defender of the user, I would say that has a lot more to do with your customer satisfaction scores, your maybe NPS if you're using that as a metric. So throwing a KPI at a UX team, that's like, well, I'm like, my eyes are open here. So I'm really curious as to what the PMs are going to say here.
I just wanted to quickly clarify if we are on board with what's KPI and what's a metric. Does anyone have a clear understanding of the difference, or is that the same word in your opinion?
For me, KPIs are metrics that we have selected as having a lot of value to us and being our focus. So we choose them because there are lots of metrics out there. You know, you can measure anything, but what is really important, we have made those our KPIs. But I'm happy to be challenged on that.
Fully agree with that one. It's a select subset, and metrics are, hopefully they're not something you have to put into the product later. Hopefully you're just grabbing data like a big fire hose, and we're choosing which ones are going to be of note.
Interesting. Because I was initially thinking that, in my opinion, KPIs are more sort of strategic business level, while metrics are more product level, if that makes sense. So initially I was thinking KPIs are ARR or MRR or, any other sort of potentially revenue related metric that you could be using. And then metrics would be, daily active users, and then monthly active users and their retention and things like that. Yeah.
I think to some extent, the two definitions are two faces of the same coin, because there are lots of metrics and you could track a lot of them, but I think it depends at which level you position yourself. If you're really an operational person, you're going to look at many metrics, which are going to be your own KPIs, because these are the metrics you decide to look at. But if you're more strategic, you're going to look at higher level metrics, so the ones you mentioned, which are less operational, for example. It just depends on your level of seniority and the scope of what you're looking at. So some of the things which are going to be metric for a chief product officer, for example, they're going to be key performance indicators for a team who implements a product.
And they may actually have something to do with the product itself. If you're at that level, it may be, is your team hitting the roadmap on time? That might be your KPI. So it's interesting about where we're pointing our beacon of attention.
And I talked recently to Shipra, who works in product operation, and she was telling me how she created this balanced scorecard, which includes KPIs or metrics, but they're always looking at on a monthly or even at sprint level. And some of them are, how many bugs did we release on time and things like this. But some of them are also like team happiness. And, because it's a balanced scorecard. It's not only, the financial metrics, but also are people performing? Do they have the right tools to perform? And overall, are they happy? But there was no metric for UX design, none that I'm aware of. So when we talked about metrics for UX design or KPIs for UX design, then Hayden, you said, we could see that in the NPS. We could see this through the usage of a product. Are people actually using it? Adoption. I also like to look at the support tickets. If lots of people are asking, how do I do this in the product? Then surely this is that they can't find how to do it. So it's not easy to do. So we should review the UX for this. But so all of those metrics are wrapped up at product level and not just UX design. So what does a UX design function has? Like, the reason behind this is because we said we tend to cut corners, and sometimes we would like to be able to justify, no, this is why we're going to review completely the user journey. This is why we're going to spend a lot of time in our roadmap and delay some new features because we want to review the experience. So how can we prove that this is a good investment?
It's funny. I think it always comes down to the business objectives and how integrated the design team is into the business thinking. So hopefully the ROI is a done and dusted conversation. Companies understand that design plays an important part in their field and that it is an investment and that it does have a return on that. So you could measure it purely by ARR. That might be your metric for understanding how well the product is functioning, and that is a direct result of a UX team or a product design team's efforts, and many other factors, of course. But you might want to understand it purely by how viral the product is, the growth and the spread, because it is creating delight. So I think to say that there's a metric specifically for UX might be a little bit of a red herring. It might be more just the understanding that a mature company already knows that it's a return on investment and is looking at key business metrics anyway.
We also don't have a specific metric for UX, but it usually comes up in conversation or competitors analysis when you ask customers who return to you or, who have used some competitor and came back to you. You ask them, so why did you leave them? And thing that always comes up with, that system was clunky to use. We couldn't train our employees to use it, things like that. And your system is really good. So it's more like a verbal things that we get from our customers and users rather than something they can see as a number. That's how it works for us.
I think indeed we don't have any specific UX design metric to track in my company neither. We have two main things that we are aligned with at all times, which is first product-wise metrics that are like Hayden mentioned, the NPS, or sometimes other types of scale questions regarding the product's usability and value, like importance, value, easiness, seamlessness. And then the other side is more strategic business-wise metrics that we are aligned with at all times. And we know that what we're doing is impacting those metrics directly.
Can I just ask the three of you, do any of you feel like you have too many KPIs? Is it like a really well-defined set within your company? Is it something you're all on board? You could put it on a TV screen in the, canteen and be aware of it 100% of the time? Or is it a bit more role-based and specific?
I feel like for us, it's quite team specific. So we have this overarching KPI for the whole company, but then each team, so we use OKRs for our goal setting, and then every team would then set up their own OKRs, which would then ideally feed into that one overarching one. So yeah, it's quite team specific, I guess.
In my company right now, we have different squads that have different job to be done, and they each have different OKRs and KPIs.
Yeah, in my experience, the OKRs were team specific because it depends on your product and the initiatives that you want to drive. The metrics or KPIs that were tracked by the top management were the same for every team. And I've seen this as being an area of friction, I would say, because then you start to compare different teams or different areas of a product with the same metrics. And they're not comparable. And that's the same we talked about with Shipra in terms of operations, is those metrics, like the data, it's always good to have more data if you know how to use it. But if you use it in a way that can be detrimental like this, you try to compare how many story points a team has done in one sprint versus another team, how many releases a team has done in 1 month versus another team. Whereas they don't have the same tech stack, they don't have the same challenges, they don't have the same priority. It can lead to demotivation for the team. I remember seeing my product being at the bottom of that board, but it wasn't that it was bad. It was just that it was used by only a subset of customers, not all customers. So you can't really compare, right? And so it can be quite frustrating when you compare the same metrics across different products and you don't have the story that goes with it, which is why actually my word for KPI should have been more story, actually, now that I think about it, because one thing that triggers me is when people look at some data and make conclusions which are wrong because they don't have the story behind it. What was the rationale behind your question, Hayden? Do you agree? Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I asked it because for me it has to do with that idea of focus, and that's why I went, we're in trouble here with Iryna's word, because it really is about saying, look, this is what's important to us. This is, of all the thousands of data points we have, these are the ones we're going to pay attention to. The whole team or squad or unit knows that, and then it allows you to assess. And if you don't have that, if it's missing and it's not laser focused, then it becomes useless.
Okay, so I'm not going to say which team said what. I'm sure you remember, but just so that I don't bias anyone. So we had measurable, essential, focus, and value. Hayden, which one do you vote for?
Yeah, I think you already know it's focus. I regret to say.
I just wanted to hear it. Iryna, which one?
Is it too selfish to vote for my own word? Okay, I would vote for focus as well.
Pamela?
Iryna won this one 100%. Like, focus is the best rep of what you can call a KPI.
Okay, let me think before I say. I really like focus as well, just because of all the color we've added based on the discussion. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, 1 point for the PM team.
Yay, amazing.
Right, so as you know, the PM team has won the last round and had won as well the second round. So we win. Well done, 2-1.
You brought it home.
Right, now I'm going to have to make sure that for the next roundtable, the PM team loses. Let's summarize this episode about KPIs. So if you have one takeaway, each of you, or one call to action for product managers who have listened to this episode and will think, I should start to think more about KPIs, what would it be?
Something that I haven't realized before, but they came to me today, is that you can't really measure UX, or at least we all just don't know how to measure it yet and whether we should actually do that. Yeah, it's just something that was always in the air, but you never really talk about it. That was very valuable to me. Thanks a lot for that, everyone.
Pamela?
I think that's a great question for a PM. Just kidding. But I'm going to also talk about the other word. As we talked about in the A/B tests question, there's more variables to solving something, and the KPIs is no different as well. So I think that's my main takeaway, to be more focused.
And I think that part of that focus is to do with having the whole team sharing the KPI. So the creation of those KPIs very much needs to come from everyone, because it's going to be the standard, or it's going to be the funnel that everything goes through. And so in that regards, setting a bad KPI because of the focus that it has might be really dangerous.
Very good point. Using the KPIs in the wrong way can be detrimental for the product, but also for the team who is working on it. So I would advise people to think carefully about which KPIs they use and how they use it. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating. I thought we had some very interesting discussions, and I hope it got the listeners to think about how they implement KPIs and A/B testing and how they think about UX design. So thank you so much and have a good day.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Magali, for having us. Have a good day, all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
This was amazing. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Lots of fun. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it has enabled you to understand your stakeholder and inspired you to better work with them to make successful products. If so, please share the link with your friends and colleagues. And if you want to suggest some topics, some guests, if you have questions you'd like me to ask during the interviews, or if you have any feedback, you can write to me at magalipellissier@hotmail.fr.